happened with progressive pop, what happened was, well, two things happened. I mean, Boston. I mean, that's obviously the most important thing. And again, like I said, you're talking about this, the digital age. So Boston comes out, and the single comes back.
Yeah.
See, Led Zeppelin started the whole album thing. Everybody had to go out and buy an album. Oh, Led Zeppelin. So everybody just rode on that wave. And so, I mean, you had to go out and buy, and they put so much work in those phonographs. I mean, artwork. Like I said, you know, the problem with cassettes, you know, all that artwork and famous artwork and all that, you know, writing a book is gone. You know, it's like, yes, you'd open it up and it was a book. It was like holding the Necronomicon, you know, when you got a Yes album, you know, and it'd be two discs, and you're like, which one do I listen first? You know, and that was a good money spent. And that was the whole phonograph thing. Then Boston comes out, and things change. Why? Because you get back to the single. Because you got radio play. You got DJ Bob out there. You know, you stayed at midnight with progressive music, and you'd listen. All right, tonight we're going to have a special Yes presentation. And you'd wait midnight, and you'd listen to 20 minutes of one Yes song. That was special. That was something special that you waited for. But people did it. You know, it's like, dude, we're going over to Bob's house, and we're getting some Mountain Dew, and we're going to listen to that Yes thing on the radio. And you go travel thing. Oh, heck, they used to do live concerts on the radio. It was something special. It was very important special. That special stuff came out. The Boston comes out with a single, and everybody's like, let's ride that thing, because everybody heard that one song on the radio. And instead of people saying, well, let's go out and buy the whole new Boston album, people were like, no, we've got to have that single. And people thought, what would be a good idea if we just produced the single of that Boston thing, and then that way people would buy it. And people bought into it. And so what happened was, in the secular market, it didn't do so well in the Christian market yet. People were like, oh, we gotta have that single. Well, that Boston song got here. The new whatever came out. And so that changed music where it was. So singles came big. At the same time this is going, Christian music becomes big because, like I said, more of it is coming out. It's a lot easier to make. Calvary Chapel becomes a recording place. It becomes a main recording place. And Nashville doesn't really hear the call. They don't really grab onto this immediately. And I think that hurt them, because I think it would be very important, because it was very controversial. Mm-hmm. Your big Southern Baptist churches were kind of still, I don't know about this, you know. Very few people kind of think, even, you know, your most, I mean, like Tim LaHaye might have things we brace a little bit here and there.
Yeah,
but
Billy Graham even used some of it.
Yeah, but I mean, what was happening in Calvary Chapel was still a little controversial, especially with people like Reverend Frisbee and people like that, because Lonnie Frisbee, I mean, was like way out there for a lot of people. And so people weren't all into it, but you take, they did start strapping down. Calvary Chapel became one of the most conservative places, and one thing you get is, that's the reason why you get Maranatha music, because of they got tired of dealing with all the controversy that they were dealing with artists and what out there, and why they went to Maranatha music. Because when I was growing up, folks, people said Maranatha music, and you know what I thought about? Praise and worship.
And children's music.
And children's music.
Yeah.
This is what
Salty.
happened. Yeah.
P-S-A-L-T.
Yeah. I mean, that was Maranatha.
Yeah.
But people forgot that Maranatha had Daniel Amos and a bunch of other groups like that. Probably love songs.
Well, they did their first. There's a story about the Maranatha compilation that had the very first Daniel Amos song on it.
Right.
You know, people say, well, when's the first Daniel Amos song? Well, 1976.
Right.
Well, actually, this goes back to 1975 with the Maranatha song that was on the Maranatha compilation. And so they were going to be the up-and-coming band. This is an up-and-coming band.
Well, it's like I said, you know, I compared to Eagles, and I think that's a pretty good comparison to what Daniel Amos was to Christian music.
Well, it's how they started.
Yeah.
They if you don't know who Daniel Amos is, and you're a Christian, shame on you. If you don't know who Daniel Amos is and you're a music lover, shame on you. Daniel Amos is what Well, basically, let me put it to you this way. If there'd been no Daniel Amos, there would probably, alternative music, and I'm not talking about Christian alternative music, would probably be a very different thing. Because back when New Wave was embraced by the secular market, Daniel Amos was already past that and already starting to work on what would be considered alternative. Because there's a difference between alternative and New Wave. And let me just put it to you this way. New Wave was pop.
Right.
If you listen to alternative, you understand this. Because alternative music is not pop. Alternative is not what you're going to hear when you listen to the pop radio station. You know, they're going to say, well, here's another set of popular music. Well, chances are your pop musician is not going to be on there unless he happened to hit a pop band.
Hence the term alternative.
Yeah.
Because it's an alternative pop music.
Right. It's a different
Right,
music.
because
Different
it's like with whenever music changes and they start changing the formats. I think, and I was bringing this up about a very influential show regarding that generation is WKRP in Cincinnati, and this show was about a local radio station that was changing its format, and at this time, and this is what amazes me. Because people weren't born in this time. It's like what I said about, I was talking to a band guy and we were up recording. When I was training for recording engineering, I was probably the third oldest guy there. There was two other guys that were older than me. And I was training on learning how to do recording engineering. And the thing about these kids, that back in those days they could put in a cassette of hard rock music, a 12-year-old could, and no one would say anything. And what they don't understand was it was very controversial to have a rock format in the 70s, pre-disco era. So you're talking about 75 or 76. If an FM station at the time, because AM was starting to piddle out. I mean, AM played all your great pop music. You put in an AM radio and you're like listening to, it's like the Carpenters. We've only just begun. That was AM music. And then FM comes out, and what changes is, number one, it's not mono. See, AM is like you walked around with your AMs like. You only just begun. And all this work that James Brown put in the song, no one heard. Because it was gone through this little tinny radio of AM music. I mean, James Brown said, okay, we're going to go down to D. We're going down to G. I'm going to add little horns over here in this section. I'm going to have a little bass over here. I'm going to have a snap drum in the back. And we're going to put it all together. Dun, do, dee, ba, da, ba, ba. And all people heard was, that was AM radio. Okay, that's what AM radio was. FM comes about. Rock music is coming about.
That's why you need two speakers, guys.
Right. You get two speakers. So it makes things a little bit different. And FM at the time was cheaper because nobody thought it was going to work. People bought AM because that's what everybody listens to is AM radio. And so these rock guys were like, dude, we're forced to do FM radio. Because you know what was on FM radio at the time? This is Bob Yorker. We're going to talk to the latest Republican candidate. And we're going to talk to you, Bob. What's going on, Bob? Well, it's like this. We've got to do something about this taxing. We're being taxed to death. You heard it right here. We're being taxed. And that was FM radio. But it was really cheap to buy. So these guys like, oh, we got this rock music. So they started buying FM radio up. So then kids weren't listening to AM music anymore. And see, now it's switched around. Now AM talk radio, and now you got FM music. But back in those days, that's the way it was, because like you said, you had the FM stereo, and so people could listen to Pink Floyd at night, and it was something special because kids this is how you bought music when you were younger. Okay, this is you buying music now. I like that song. I'm going to support that artist. So you get on there and it's done. That's how you bought music nowadays. Now, how did they buy music? They heard it on the radio, and it means you had to get up. Sometimes it was if you lived out in the country in the middle of nowhere, it was a 30 to 40 minute drive. Hour sometimes.
Maybe an hour. We lived at hours away from Chattanooga.
Just to drive to get your artist. Mm-hmm. So you better have loved them. And it's like there was a rule of thumb if you like 3 or 4. But like I said, that's the reason why singles were popular at the time. We, however, were still in that. We never got in that singles mode. Some people were. Some people are still today buy just singles. I've never been in that. I figure if an artist is going to he still makes a good album. But back in those days, I've never really lived in the Led Zeppelin era. I couldn't tell you about it, or the Yes era. I lived in the time where you make a 4-minute song and then you just build around it. That's the era that was. That's the reason why people hate my generation, because we were in the generation of mediocrity. I mean, it was like, okay, I got this song. Oh, man, that's awesome. Okay, now build around it, and that's an album. Back in Led Zeppelin and Yes, it was, we're going to make an album. And then we'd make a movie. And Channel 4 Productions would make a movie of Yes playing live. And then people in England would go travel and pay tickets and watch the Yes movie. And that's different because it cost money to lift the organ that Rick Wakeman played. I mean, that alone was a sight itself. There's some people who would just show up to the concert just to see Rick Wakeman's organ be set up and leave because that was a show. That was all they needed to see. I mean, they helicopter the thing. And the people think, oh, there's the military. We're being invaded again. The sirens. No, it was just Rick Wakeman's organ being set up at the concert. And you thought his setup was great. Think about Lake Emerson Palmer. That was even more impressive. They had 3 trucks devoted to each artist that would take them to the show. That's something I never lived. That's something that these kids will never live. They think of, I remember watching Skillet following them around. It was a van and a little truck they had, pulling things, And they were good artists because they didn't have to have, 50 men do a setup, They set up Skillet with all 4 band members, and that's how they did it. And,